Hi, everyone. Welcome to a amazing Facebook Live session where we have Entrepreneur Magazine columnist Marla Mattenson. She's also the CEO of Mattenson Coaching and Consulting. She is so much more than a relationship and intimacy coach, but that is one of the many reasons that we've asked her to join us on Facebook Live today, and she's honored us with her presence all the way from California. That's why we have the split screen. So Marla, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's so amazing to be here. I love you and I love what you do. And I think you're a phenomenal being in the world. So I am honored to be here.
Thank you. Well, you know that feeling is completely mutual from my side. Marla, so a lot of people I know are wondering what is the difference between a relationship coach versus a therapist, marriage counselor, and so forth. What is your response to that?
I love that question. Here's the thing. All of us in that realm, relationship coaches, relationship experts, relationship therapists, all of us are out there to help. Okay. So there's not one is better than the other. It's just different. So typically with therapists, I'm not speaking for all therapists, but most therapists will approach relationship work with excavating a lot from the past and really delving into the why behind everything. And when the session is over, the session is over. And then you come back maybe the next week or 2 weeks later, or maybe multiple times a week. And that kind of consistency is very helpful over a long period of time to uncover, the material in your relationship. It's very gentle in my opinion. And I've been through therapy many years. And as a coach, coaches in general tend to be more action oriented. So it's less about excavating from the past and it's more about what's happening now and how are you showing up now, regardless of wherever it came from, which there's value in where it came from, of course, which is why therapy is there and other modalities. And yet, if what's happening right now in your relationship is impacting your relationship now, then what if you start taking different action today and then your partner takes different action today and you start getting a different result? So the coaches tend to be action oriented and encourage different action to create different results. And the other thing is, it's not an indefinite period of time for coaching. So for me as a coach, you get to work with me for a finite period of time. I don't want to work with anybody for 10, 20 years. I want to work with people over 9 months and really change everything that they want to change in their relationship and their business. And then we're done, right? You're done. Go either work with somebody else or you have all the tools you need to actually go out there and be different in your relationship rather than thinking about it or wondering about it.
And this is not an and or thing, relationship coach versus therapist or counselor. Both could be very necessary and needed, correct?
100%. In fact, there are times where I require one or more of my clients to be in therapy while they are working with me and my partner, Julian. So he and I coach together. And so when we're working with a couple, if we start to uncover some material that is out of our expertise, that's out of the realm of what we do, then we will require the couple or the individual to go to therapy to start excavating there so that they have that kind of support. So it's definitely not an either or, it's definitely an and I'm a huge fan of therapy. There's a lot of value there and counseling. So yeah, that's what we do though.
And one of the many reasons that Marla is such a jewel to this relationship coaching and just coaching industry is that she comes from a very different background than most other coaches. Marla comes from a science and mathematics background. So when she's looking at the patterns and the behaviors of her clients, she's looking at it from a math and science background, and she's looking at it from a pattern and statistical models and all that stuff. So I think that's so fascinating, but it also leads me to my question. Why such a high, statistically, why do we have such a high divorce rate in the country, according to your thoughts?
Oh, wow. Yes. Well, on my background, yes, I don't have a traditional psychology background, although I've studied psychology and communications trainings for years. My background is super logical. So mathematics and neuroscience and what is our brain doing when we're actually in a conflict with our partners? partners, right? And here's the thing. One of the reasons why statistics of divorce are so high is because, dun, 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 communication is a huge problem. And from a scientific background, here's what's happening that we need to know. We are programmed biologically to lie to our partners. What?
Yeah, that blows my mind. Every time you say that, it blows my mind. I heard you say that before. Can you give us a taste of that a little bit? Explain.
I know. It's like, wait a second,
woman.
Like, I'm not a liar. What's the deal here? Actually, guess what? We're all liars. Okay, I got it out. Here's what happens. Think about it. When you're in a conflict with your partner, your sweetheart, whom I know, who's amazing, right? Mm-hmm. You're in a conflict. What's your first internal response? Genuinely.
Probably fear of abandonment.
Okay. It's certainly not open, vulnerable, softness, love, connection.
Your heart just literally puts a wall up.
Exactly. It's a biological response. And it's coming from this cascade of chemicals that actually gets released in our brain because we see our partners as a threat in conflict. Even though they love us, they want nothing more than to give us everything we desire. But in the moment of conflict, when there is a challenge, both of us start to see each other as a threat from a biological perspective. And so our first response is that fight, flight, or freeze response. And that relates directly to shutting it down, shutting it out, or shutting it off. And so we either withdraw, or we lie to get out of the situation, or we placate, or we get defensive and we get in a fight stance where we want to prove our point or make the other person wrong. So all these habitual patterns are not only natural because they're from our biology, but we also learned them and had them reinforced from our parents because why? They learned them from their parents. And it's nobody's fault. It's not your fault. It's just that if you never come out of that old habitual pattern by saying, oh, that's just my first response, my first internal response, guess what? I'm kind of a jerk. I'm kind of a jerk in my first response. And then if I can pause long enough to say, what do I consciously want to say? What do I want to articulate? How do I want to take all of this sort of crazy that's going on and speak it out loud to my partner? And I have to watch a few things. I have to watch my tone of voice. I can get a really nasty tone of voice, really nasty. I don't even want to do it right now. It'll scare everybody away. But my partner hears it. And when he hears it and I hear it, I'm like, oh my God, that's that horrible tone of voice. So the tone of your voice.
That's not Marla, that's your pattern speaking.
Exactly. And so when we start doing the work together, then he starts to recognize that tone of voice, that nasty tone of voice. And if he doesn't respond to that and instead is just calm and silent and doesn't engage, doesn't react and respond, then we don't go spiraling down into the hole. Instead, we realize, ooh, we're in it. This is the moment. This is the moment to come out of the pattern together.
But you and Julian have had such good communication with each other that he recognizes when you're stepping into your biological pattern, and you can now recognize when he's stepping into his. So you guys don't even take it personally at this point. Is that correct?
Well, I'll say this. We still take it personally, but what we do when we take it personally is we say it out loud. So we say, you know what, I'm taking what you're saying personally. So, and I know it's not personal. So let me see what I can do internally to shift toward you, right? And so in conflict, we want to move away from our partners because they're annoying us or they're hurting our feelings or they're angry or whatever is going on. And instead, when we both make the decision to turn towards each other, just magic happens. And it's the most vulnerable, challenging thing to do when you're in that moment where you most want to run away and instead you choose to say, I'm really struggling and I want to stay in this with you. And I don't want to have that tone of voice. I don't want to have this body posture. I want to be open and vulnerable with you. So can you help me?
Yeah. Can you help me through it? So you're saying we are biologically programmed to not be able to successfully communicate with our partners.
Yes, we are basically biologically programmed to ruin relationships.
Wow. Wow.
That's kind of heavy.
Yeah, that is heavy. And you know what? I think that's so great to know that, though, because it's empowering. I think a lot of people through the divorce process, they feel so much guilt and shame about it. And they feel like they are inherently flawed for not being able to maintain that relationship or that marriage, or their family broke apart from it. That's sort of what the mission of Atlanta Divorce Law Group is with Happily Ever After Divorce, is just to take away that stigma and not make people feel all that guilt and shame. And I think what you just gave us is such a forgiving but yet empowering message for us to love ourselves and realize this is programmed in you to keep you safe, but you're not running away from, a tiger anymore.
Exactly. There's no saber-toothed tiger chasing us down the street, right?
Yeah.
Instead, we just think there is, right? Biologically, we're like, oh, hold on a second. And we all feel that. Like, there are moments throughout our day where we just think, hold on, it's too scary right now. Everybody pause, right? Mm-hmm. And when we have our negative habitual patterns that just, as soon as this thing happens, this comes out my mouth, that's when we have to say, okay, I'm going to take personal responsibility for every word that leaves my mouth. Every word. And then if something comes out of my mouth that is negative or harming my partner or anyone in the family, that I take responsibility for that too.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why we have the process we call the redo. The relationship redo is, guess what? If I realize I showed up in a way that was less than favorable, in the moment, I can ask for a redo and say, hey, Sarah, can I get a redo? And you'll say,
yes, of course.
Right? And then that's
do that with a sham.
Exactly. And so then what happens? Both of us choose to show up as our absolute best selves, sparkly eyes, smiling face, and we reenact the exact same scenario, except this time we show up as our best selves and we go for the outcome we really wanted. So instead of the tone of voice that was nasty to start, we start with the tone that's like, hey, babe, I realize ... Would you be willing to ... And then the response is, oh, thank you for sharing that with me. I would love to help with this ... and not this part ... Okay, great. And so we show up as our best selves, and that eliminates the need to ever say I'm sorry ever again, because you literally redo it in the moment. Then you don't need your NLP 10 years from now to neuro-linguistic programming, which is a fantastic modality, but you don't need it anymore because you are redoing it in the moment with your partner.
In the moment. And in the moment, it actually is much more powerful for your programming, correct? If it happens,
You're literally rewiring your brain in the moment.
That's so brilliant.
Even Zoe, our 8-year-old, I've inherited her, of course, because she's Julian's daughter, and I get to enjoy. But she reminds me every once in a while, she'll see Julian and I like in a little bit, just a little bit of a conflict, and she'll go like this, Marla, you should ask her.
That's so cute.
Like, you're amazing. You're amazing.
And how brilliant that we can do that and show our children that it's okay to mess up. You can fix it. Because we put all this pressure on ourselves to be perfect, and we never want our children to see that we've ever messed up. And that's so harmful to them to think that they can never mess up. And that's so great, because now Zoe's learned, hey, even Marla, as fabulous as she is, will need a redo every now and then.
Yes, I've asked her for a redo. I mean, it is phenomenal. It's really one of the simplest practices we can do, and also really effective with colleagues, in sales conversations. I have a friend who actually used a redo in a sales conversation where he did kind of a really crappy job in a sales conversation, called the guy the next day and said, hey, can I get a redo on our sales conversation? And then made the sale. I mean, it was kind of phenomenal.
It's swallowing your ego and going for the result you really want. Brilliant.
You nailed it right there. And that's one of the reasons why divorce rates are so high, is because we're not willing to actually swallow the ego.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The ego is running the show. The ego doesn't want to look like anything other than perfect. The ego thinks that I'm amazing and you're the one with the problem. Yeah. And That's never true. We are all human. So, yes.
So Marla, better communication, swallow your ego, some good tips for couples avoiding being another statistic. Is there anything else we should add to that list?
Well, yes, I would say that rather than swallowing the ego, what we teach is integrating the ego, which is, a lot of people try to cut it away and make it wrong. The ego is never going away, ever. It's never going away. So the idea here is that we start to love it. We start to recognize when it's leading the show, because the ego is also the part that is driving ambition and success. It's the one that wants more, more, more all the time. And so we don't want to cut that part out. We just don't want it driving, on a really windy road, driving crazy, right? That's what it starts to do. And instead, we want to say, okay, we're going to give you specific times and dates when you can drive. And then the rest of the time, the real me is in charge, meaning like the true connected part of me, the inner, the part that's connected to source and spirit and God, right? That's the real true me. And that's the part that's leading most of the time. But my whole cast of characters, my inner child, my inner elder, my crazy person, my wacko girl, they're all in there.
Yeah.
Ready to hang out.
And you gotta love them all.
You gotta love them all.
You gotta love them, because that's what gets you all the different things that you also want.
Yes, yes. And you asked, what else can couples do? One thing is start practicing doing the opposite of whatever you've been doing in conflict.
Okay.
So if you've been trying to make nice in conflict, do the opposite, stand your ground.
Okay.
If you've been standing your ground and digging your heels in, try to make nice, right? So start doing something the opposite. You got to shake it up. You got to do it something different, because otherwise you groove in those patterns together, and then you're wiring your brains together. Oh, when Julian does this, I do that, right? Oh, when Marla does this, Julian does that. Well, we shake that up all the time. He doesn't know how I'm going to respond. Yeah. And by the way, that's sexy.
That is. And that is a human need, right? Variety. People need variety. And even in our way as of fighting, we need some variety.
Yes. And here's the best form of variety in a conflict. If you can do it, it's kind of challenging. And if you don't have a playful relationship in general, it's really challenging. But if in the middle of a conflict, you can find the wait, are we really doing this? Like the playfulness.
Yeah.
Little moment of I'm catching a smile. I see a smile. You can't be angry with me when you're smiling, right? Yeah. If you can do that, that will change the whole energy. Then you give yourself a break. Don't dive back into the conflict. Go for a walk together where you're walking hand in hand or side by side, where you're not looking at each other. When we're facing each other, that is actually an aggressive stance. Yeah. So instead, when we're facing away and we're walking together somewhere, we can just kind of off gas a little bit and just talk about our surroundings and get a little superficial for a minute. And then once you're calm together, then you can revisit, wow, I didn't show up great there. Can I get a redo?
Can I get a, Marla, you just made me realize something, and it's so brilliant. I really just had an aha moment with you. That is how our children fight. Because when my son, when I'm scolding him, he looks for that moment. He looks for that moment where he can kind of get his flirtatious little eyes on me and see, well, my cute little smile, can I get that in? Oh, Mom, I saw you. And can I catch Mom smiling while she's mad at me? And then he goes in for the kill. So we are probably inherently have this in us. At some point along the way, we stop exercising it.
We do. And in children, it's two things. It's one, it's a form of manipulation.
Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
Because he's trying to get out of whatever discipline you're, infusing there. Yeah. And the second thing is that they know that all of this is kind of bullshit, meaning this whole fight thing, whatever I'm doing wrong and you're disciplining me for, or whatever, it's kind of not even true. And we can just live harmoniously together. We can just talk about this and work it out. So on some level, probably on a very deep subconscious level, he's like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
We don't even need to go through all of this. So that's a super wise child who would be aware of that, but I wouldn't put that past your kid.
No. Yeah, unfortunately, I wouldn't either. Marla, I could ask you so many questions. I know I'm limited on time, so I'm trying to ask the ones that I can. We're going to have to get a redo with you. Can you, what are deal breakers in a relationship, according to what you have seen? When is it time where you say, you know what, I got to move on from this, or you know what, we can get past this. Let's fight for this relationship. So are there any deal breakers? If so, what are they?
It's a great question. So, some universal deal breakers, they really have to do with violence and abuse. Violence and abuse are universal deal breakers. So if someone is in a cycle of abuse, you have to end that relationship because they're not going to come out of it with you. It's highly, highly unlikely that if you are engaged in an abusive relationship, which is a pattern, one person is an abuser and the other person receives the abuse and allows it to happen and is maybe even shocked that it's happening, right?
Yeah.
That when that pattern gets linked, it's very challenging to unlink it with that person. So one person has to break away. So I would say those are the big universal deal breakers. And the more subtle ones are, does this person have a similar or same vision of life, right? Do we have a same or similar way of looking at the world? Like if one person is always looking at the world as what's possible and the other one is always sort of a Debbie Downer, then it's really challenging. And it just roots in this, I have to fight against my partner just to be happy, right? So I think that everything else is very personal about personal choices. Like for some people, cigarette smoking is a deal breaker. For some people, if you don't lead a healthy lifestyle, that would be a deal breaker.
How about somebody that's had an affair?
Ooh, great question. I do not think that affairs are deal breakers, except if you understand the volition behind the affair. So if someone has an affair, this is a longer topic of conversation, but if somebody,
have you back.
Okay, I would love to come back. It's a result in some cases of the parent-child dynamic in the relationship. So follow with me on this, okay? So let's say you're in a relationship. Let's just say it's a traditional man-woman relationship. The woman turns more naggy and demanding, and the man is less interested in sex with his partner because she's getting more naggy, and so he starts acting out, and this dynamic of he's never good enough for her, he's not good enough for, why didn't you do the dishes? How come you didn't bring the laundry home from the dry cleaners? Oh, all the things that he does wrong. If she's focusing on that all the time, then internally he's going to start to withdraw. And then he's going to start doing childish behaviors like not picking up the dry cleaning when he says he's going to, not following through with what he says he's going to. And then the most childish thing someone can do is have an affair.
Because that's a cry for attention?
It is basically saying, I'm not going to give you the respect that you deserve as my wife to say, I don't want to be in this with you anymore. I want to be with somebody else. Instead, I'm just going to pack up my party and do it behind your back. That's why it's childish. And it's not childish from a conscious perspective. It's childish from an unconscious, subconscious perspective. It's the ego that's unhappy in the marriage and not willing to get counseling or therapy or coaching to do something about it and turn towards the partner in that conflict, that sort of ongoing conflict, the pattern of he can never do it right, and she's always the boss, and she's always the one that's right and handling everything, right? And so when we treat our partners like that, as women, our partners tend to withdraw, go away, and go find love somewhere else. And they think it's like, I'm just trying to have a good, happy life. But really, it's coming from a childish place internally, unconsciously, subconsciously. If they do that without saying to their partner first, I want to have an affair. I'm so unhappy with this, I want to have an affair. That's not childish. That is very adult. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And it sounds like in that situation, the husband has chosen the flight approach over the fight approach, because that's what they're afraid of, is if they come and say out and express what they want, the fight's going to happen, and they want to avoid the fight, so they're going for flight, which is a childish response. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, yes. Very nice. I like how you looped that around. And, the original fight, flight, or freeze response is biological. And so the biology is driving those childish responses. But again, who's in charge of the action? Who's in charge of the words that leave our mouth? That's us as individuals. I can't control my biology on the first try, right? The first round, biology takes over. Biology trumps and wins the game.
Yeah.
However, the second response, which is, wow, I'm feeling so alone and withdrawn in my marriage that I want to search elsewhere. And instead, I'm going to turn towards my partner and tell them the truth. That is the most loving and vulnerable thing that you could ever do.
And in your experience working with your clients, have you seen success for couples that had an affair one way or another be able to come back to each other and rekindle their marriage or relationship?
Yes, absolutely. Because here's the thing, it's never just that one person's fault.
Yeah.
Never. It takes two people to create that dynamic that makes him want to go somewhere else or makes her want to go somewhere else. If her needs aren't being fulfilled, if he's in the parent role, then she's going to want to go somewhere else too. So the idea here is recognizing when we have that cascade of chemicals released, recognizing that we're not in charge of that first internal response. We are in charge of the second response. That's the only thing we have control over, is the second response with our actions, our words, our emotions, our thoughts. And if we choose to turn towards each other in those moments of challenge, that's what's going to sustain a loving, healthy dynamic. Even if you had terrible relationships for your whole life, you can change that on a dime today.
That is so great. And that is so much hope for so many people out there that have this cultural understanding that, cheating means I have to get a divorce, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's a personal choice. You don't need to let your community, your family, your environment make that choice for you. It's a choice you and your spouse or your partner need to make together.
Exactly.
Marla, I want to acknowledge the fact that, you are probably one of the most exclusive relationship and intimacy coaches in all of the United States. I mean, you are very selective on the clients you select to work with, the couples that you work with. So not everybody will probably get an opportunity and to work with you. But thanks to Entrepreneur Magazine, they have now given you your own column, Dear Marla, where people can ask these kind of questions and you will actually respond to them. And I've been reading them and following them, and I think they've been incredibly helpful to our clients that we've shared it with. If anybody wants to ask a Dear Marla question, can you give them some guidance on how they can do that?
I would love to. So for entrepreneur.com is having me as their relationship columnist, which is pretty exciting. So anybody can go to either entrepreneur.com and search Marla Mattenson and send a message that way, or just go directly to my website and there's a spot down, you scroll down a little bit, contribute a question. I would love any questions from any of your audience members, anybody in your audience about relationships, business, money mindset, intimacy, sex, anything, cheating, anything that they have. I would love to get questions, and the questions that are really the juiciest that we think will impact the most people, those are the ones that get picked for the column. And then we can send private messages to the people who send other questions as well.
And it's all anonymous, so nobody's name or anything goes out. Okay. Yes. So really, guys, if you're not sending a question to Marla, you are missing out. She always approaches these things from an angle that will blow your mind and then make sense of everything else around you. So please take advantage of that. Marla, I love you for doing this with me. You are an absolute gem. I'm so honored to know you and so honored to share you with our clients and everybody on our Facebook world. So thank you so much. And thank you for giving me this time.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back anytime.
Oh, I'm gonna hold you to that.
Okay, perfect.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for watching, and definitely go on Marla's site and send in your questions, and we will be sure to put her link up so you guys can click on it and do it right. Make it very easy for you, and we'll keep up with you guys next week. Thank you. Bye, Marla.
Bye.